Welcome to the Anti-Pravda Show, the Savage Nation. I have never in my lifetime ever seen a press as servile to a regime as we currently see under the Obama regime. It is astounding to me how this thing with this Aiken story has now trumped, let us say, the stories that you should be concerned about, such as the great commander-in-chief Barry Obama permitting a Soviet submarine to cruise without any interruption in the Gulf of Mexico for days or weeks. How about the fact that the Middle East is burning because of the great commander-in-chief, not covered by CNN and the other outlets? Instead, Aiken. It is as though the dream has come true for them, and they can't let it go. So we're not going to talk about that inane story. We're going to talk about other things on the Savage Nation today, and one is going to come to you out of left field. I pride myself on having a bit of a historic perspective on things on the Savage Nation, and I've been thinking about the government going to war against the people. I was thinking about it because it's happened here, and many of you don't know this. Many of you think that if the army were ever turned on you, the citizen, it would be unprecedented. What you don't know is that the reason the federal government is arming itself to the teeth with hollow point bullets is because they are planning to use those bullets against the people. There's no question in my mind. That's absolutely what they're thinking. However, if they do, it would be a disaster, number one. Shouldn't happen, number two, but there would be a precedent. That's right. It happened in 1932. The story is the Bonus Army. And I'm telling you the story for a number of reasons. Many of you are armed and many of you think you're dangerous. But you have no idea how dangerous a military is with tanks and heavy weapons when they're unleashed upon citizens. Just look at Syria. It happened here. And when I get through with this story on the Savage Nation today, you will shudder to learn which general, or shall I say which heroic generals of the past, were in charge of shooting soldiers dead in the streets of the United States of America. So what am I talking about and why am I talking about it? I am talking about the Bonus Army. When 43,000 marchers, 17,000 World War I veterans, their families and groups, gathered in Washington, D.C. in 1932 to demand immediate payment of their service certificates. They were given bonuses for having served in World War I, but they were tricked. They could not be redeemed until 1945, and the veterans were starving. And they wanted those bonuses redeemed immediately. And so they camped out in front of the White House. Finally, on July 28th, the then U.S. attorney, let's say the predecessor of Eric Holder, ordered the veterans removed from all government property. Washington police met with resistance, shots were fired, and 2 veterans were wounded and later died. Veterans were also shot dead at other locations during a demonstration. Then President Herbert Hoover then ordered the Army to clear the veterans' campsite, get it out of there. Who commanded the infantry and cavalry brigades with the support of 6 tanks? None other than Army Chief of Staff General Douglas MacArthur commanded the infantry and the cavalry with tanks to wade into the American veterans who were demanding that they be paid. The Bonus Army marchers with their wives and children were driven out and their shelters and belongings were burned to the ground. Then a second and smaller bonus march occurred in 1933 at the start of the Roosevelt administration, and that was diffused in May with an offer of jobs for the Civilian Conservation Corps, and there were no shootings at that time. The fact of the matter is, this is a sad stain in American history, un-American history, when soldier killed soldier. Soldier killed soldier. Did you know who one of the aides was to General MacArthur at the time? During the military operation, Major Dwight D. Eisenhower, later President of the United States, was serving as one of MacArthur's junior aides. But here's an important point of history. Unlike MacArthur, Eisenhower thought it was wrong for the Army's highest-ranking officer to lead an action against fellow American war veterans, and Eisenhower strongly advised MacArthur against taking any public role. He says this. Here is the history. Here is what Eisenhower said to MacArthur. He said, "I told that dumb SOB not to go down there, he said later. I told him it was no place for the chief of staff. Nevertheless, they did it. And I'm giving you this history so that you understand what could happen when you defy the federal government. They have and they will use lethal force against you. Now, does this mean that we roll over to Obama and his communist brigades? Absolutely not. It means we expose them and we throw them out of office in plain English. As tepid as Romney is, as tepid as the Republicans are, they're the only choice we have right now. And I am telling you that everything is at stake right now in the savage nation. In this country right now, we have no press whatsoever. Were it not for the internet and talk radio, you would be living in a Soviet-style autocracy. We have a one-party system when it comes to the media. I'll give you another example. A list of the wealthiest members of Congress was published today. If you read the fraudulent periodical, I believe what was it called, Beowulf, the first report? Where did it come from? The name of the periodical? Here, The Hill. If you read the fraudulent Hill, and I don't know who publishes this garbage, they say that the wealthiest lawmakers were generally Republicans. Shame on the Hill. It's a garbage rag. It's nothing but a front, again, for the Soviet-style regime that we have in power, because I did my own analysis. And it turns out of the top 10, 8 of them are Democrats. But don't tell that to the Pravda writers at The Hill or anywhere else. We can talk about these topics on the Savage Nation, but I'm going to ask you one that you can relate to, and that is this. Aside from this Aiken story of the congressman who made those unfortunate remarks about abortion, tell me the 5 top stories that the vermin in the media are not covering by covering the Aiken story. Name them other than the Soviet submarine floating around in the Gulf of Mexico. Can you name 5 stories that the vermin like Little Wolfie Blitzer, the shame among shames, the biggest Soviet in the history of the media, Wolf Blitzer, they did not stop talking about this around the clock. Tell me the 5 stories that Little Wolfie Blitzer, the man amongst men, did not report and should report. Number 2, why is the FBI spying on the GOP? Why is the FBI spending very sparse resources? Apparently they're low on money, aren't they? Why are they sending their men, to Israel to spy on Republicans on a trip to Israel? Was that really a scandal? A few Republicans swam naked or with their clothes on in the Sea of Galilee? Is that your business? That's a story worthy of publishing? This is lower than yellow journalism at its peak under the worst journalist in American history. I wouldn't even call him that. Press genius named who? You know who I'm talking about, don't you? Hearst. Hearst, the man who started a war to sell newspapers. We have never lived with such yellow journalism since Hearst started a war to sell newspapers. The phone number here is 1-800-449-8255. We're going to go back to my first topic, the bonus march, because even intelligent friends of mine, and I do have a few, who are history buffs, knew nothing about the bonus march, didn't know the government had soldier killing soldier. And so to begin this, let's play, Beowulf, pick the best soundbite so we can get a background for the listeners. Go ahead, please.
The bonus veterans have defied their leaders. The police cannot handle them since the riot this morning that ended in 1 death and dozens wounded. And so they're being forced out of their shacks by smoke bombs and tear gas hurled by the troops who have been called out by the President of the United States.
Now remember what this is. These are soldiers firing upon soldiers who served in World War I under the command of the President and the Attorney General. And yet there was one Marine general who didn't join the military in attacking other military. Let's move to clip 5, and you're going to hear former Marine General Smedley Butler, a bonus marcher. Listen to what he had to say.
I never saw such fine Americanism as is exhibited by you people. You have just as much right to have a lobby here as any steel corporation. Makes me so damn mad a whole lot of people speak of you as tramps. By God, they didn't speak of you as tramps in 1917 and 18. No. Take it from me. This is the greatest demonstration of Americanism we have ever had. Pure Americanism. Don't make any mistake about it. You've got the sympathy of the American people.
Now, this is very important for you, and the reason it's very important is because the vermin in the media, the left-wing rats in the media, are trying to compare the bonus marchers with the communists in the Occupy movement. There is absolutely no comparison between the communists in the Occupy movement, who have contributed nothing to America, and veterans who contributed almost everything to America, who were then denied their bonuses. And yet, the rats in the media are trying to have you believe that the Occupy rats, who are all communists, and they even admit it now. We found an article on this that one of the leaders of the so-called Occupy movement finally admitted that its real goal is the overthrow of the American system. So don't be deceived. When you hear about the bonus march and say that, and then you're told that the occupiers are the same, understand that the Soviet-style propaganda is at a peak in your lifetime. You are living through the greatest lies ever reported by the American press, and all for one end. It's to bring about the free market system, to bring the free market system to a conclusion and introduce a system that was tried and rejected by the Soviet Union and Communist China. I'll be right back.